The purpose of this statement is to provide insight into how the CCP's influence and ambitions are undermining America. I want to clearly distinguish the difference between Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party regime. My remarks are entirely focused on the CCP regime and its ideology. My hope is that after reading this statement, you will consider it and then act upon what you learn, each of you in a way that maximizes your own expertise, your unique knowledge, and your particular area of focus. As is well documented, China has been working for decades to build their economic and military capacity in an effort to achieve their stated objective of global dominance by 2035. Let me say that again. The CCP seeking global dominance by 2035. In only 30 years, China has gone from being a potential threat to America to being an imminent threat, politically, economically, and militarily. In order to understand the complexity of the effort, it is essential to understand the pillars that buttress the CCP. Together, these pillars increase the CCP's strategic reach and tactical agility, increasing their influence, strength, and control in the arena of economics, technology, space, and warfare. These pillars as follows. Pillar number 1, military-civil fusion. Military-civil fusion in China refers to the use of civilian fronts as cover for work being done on behalf of the military and CCP. 2 examples. Inside China, there is no functional difference between a civilian virology lab and a military virology lab. Scientists from the People's Liberation Army carry out bioweapons research in labs disguised to look like civilian labs. They do this all over China, including in Hong Kong, including the WHO reference lab, which I worked in Hong Kong. For example, why would General Wei Chen, a military bioweapon expert, take over the civilian Wuhan Institute of Virology in February 2020? She has been put in charge of covering up evidence of bioweapon research at the WIV. In May of 2021, she was promoted to vice chairman of the China Association for Science and Technology. In July 2020, a Chinese researcher was arrested in California after hiding her military affiliations. Jun Tang was one of the 4 visiting researchers who had infiltrated a university in Sacramento. She had arrived in the U.S. in December 2019, just as the virus was beginning to emerge in Wuhan. Ultimately, all 4 infiltrators were charged with visa fraud. However, questions arise. What intellectual property did they steal? Were any American scientists compromised by these CCP agents? A more current example involves Dr. Li-Meng Yan from the New York Blood Center in Manhattan. She is the wife of now-dead PLA scientist Yusen Zhou. Zhou was a leading virologist and immunologist. He was studying a COVID-19 variant in the PL lab in China in May 2020. Soon after, he died unexpectedly. That variant, coincidentally, is the same variant that later appears in the UK in September 2020. Du, his wife, remains an important link in the CCP network. She graduated from a PLA university and then moved to the lab where I worked in Hong Kong to complete her PhD. From there, she went to the New York Blood Center. This is important because it gave her access to genetic data of Americans. The CCP has long been interested in genetic bioweapons. She is also important to the CCP's military-civilian network inside America, which includes Dr. Fan Li, a sitting professor at the University of Minnesota, and Dr. Ralph Baric at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Together, they have received millions of dollars of grant money from the NIH for studies related to the coronavirus and the vaccines. Having CCP agents embedded in U.S. universities is a very significant threat to America. These informants include professors, researchers, and even students. In some cases, they are here to serve the CCP, but in many cases, they are forced to serve the CCP by stealing scientific knowledge and research data. They are also here to establish professional networks that can exploit, manipulate, and compromise American scientists. The U.S. must realize the danger and immediately scrutinize it. Pillar number 2, medical and academic research. Medical and academic research often serves as an entry point for CCP agents. They seek friendly collaboration but have the same nefarious motives as military scientists. The CCP leverages that infiltrated professional networks at U.S. universities and private biotech labs using inducements in the form of research attribution, achievement awards, grants, and capital investment. These become the often subtle levels of corruption within the U.S. research and private biotech communities. This insidious tactic has corrupted the independence of researchers, medical doctors, and private biotech companies. The perfect example of this was an egregious inaction by the WHO and Peter Daszak in the early weeks of the pandemic. A long-time advocate of gain-of-function research, Daszak affiliated its funding by the NIH using his EcoHealth Alliance organization. To assist the CCP in its propaganda, Daszak promoted the nature origin theory to the outside world as the lab-enhanced virulence of the virus became known. He did so without acknowledging or disclosing his own connection to gain-of-function research, which he had enthusiastically promoted for years. Pillar number 3, misinformation and censorship. Those who disagreed with the nature origin theory were crushed by misinformation and censorship. Even in the face of early evidence to the contrary, including my own, there was no disputing the official narrative. Just 2 weeks ago, there were reports that the Biden administration is slowly conceding that the virus likely came from a lab. Why do the mainstream media and big tech still remain silent? The tech industry has revealed to the world that we in China have long known. The ability to digitally monitor and censor speech was perfected in China. We now live with what the Chinese people refer to as the Great Wall. This is a wall of digital surveillance that is ever present and imprisons who live within it. It is a digital prison for anyone who questions authority and seeks freedom. Only a few weeks ago, the Biden administration acknowledged that they are assisting Facebook to flag content which they assert is medically incorrect. This is deeply disturbing and must be challenged. To be successful in the U.S., the CCP needs willing collaborators. Enter the U.S. tech industry, renowned throughout the world for both their research and their audacious claims of independence. They have proven willful collaborators. the CCP has infiltrated many of these companies. A current example is Facebook. According to reports, 6 Chinese nationals were hired by Facebook as third-party fact-checking partners and are referred to as a hate speech engineering team. While their censorship feels like an assault on the First Amendment, the such cooperation between tech and the CCP actually constitute a more treasonous collaboration that must be confronted by lawmakers. It is vitally important that you understand that the CCP has the intention to harm America. They have the capacity to harm America, and they are ready here, inside America. Only through your decisive actions, the commitment to fight, and the will of American people can their treachery be neutralized. In summary, the CCP has oppressed and subjugated the people of China for decades. I testify to you that it is their determined objective to do the same to the entire world. The CCP has quietly but relentlessly built an enormous military capacity, one component of which is a bioweapon program using lab-manipulated virus. COVID-19 is just one example. The economic productivity has now nearly drawn parity with United States. They have ensconced Chinese Communist Party operatives in many of the West's most critical scientific, educational, tech, and military institutions. To be sure, the CCP has been assisted greatly by the growing socialist left in America. On every front, they are determined to become the world's new superpower, and they are now a profound threat to human freedom. If America does not recognize this soon and respond accordingly, the American dream of liberty that has been a beacon of light for the entire world could be lost. I ask you to join me in this fight to save human freedom for this and next generations. Thank you.
Several of the very important points that Dr. Yan has said today. First of all, when she talked about this, the civilian and military labs, and she mentioned Dr. Wei Qin, who, as of February 2020, took over the Wuhan Institute of Virology, is my understanding. In looking through the McCall report, you'll see that is verified as well, that you had a PLA general taking over that ostensibly civilian lab, and that's really critical to some of the things that Dr. Yan was saying. Another point that I thought was just so absolutely critical is the McCall report identified Peter Daszak, just like Dr. Yan did, in talking about his role in what Congressman McCall said, the biggest cover-up in the history of the world. But Peter Daszak is someone who McCall and that committee have suggested needs to be brought before Congress in order to get to the bottom of this and start peeling back what has been covered up. So, Dr. Yan, your testimony is compelling. It's important. We thank you for being here. And now we have some opportunity for members of the Freedom Caucus to ask questions. The first in my queue is Debbie Lesko and then Bob Good. Debbie.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for having this Facebook Live, and thank you to Dr. Yan. I really appreciate your testimony and your courage. The Republicans in the House of Representatives have had other witnesses come in to testify about how they believe indeed that the COVID-19 was man-made. But some of them believe that it was accidentally released from the Wuhan lab versus intentionally released. What is your belief? Do you believe that the CCP military intentionally released the COVID-19 to possibly test on a small group of people and it got out of control? Or what is your belief?
Thank you, Congresswoman Debbie. Thank you for your question. That is a very good question. And what I want to tell, based on all the evidence I had, and according to my expertise and my understanding to Chinese Communist Party and its bioweapon program, this is definitely not a lab accident. This is because of when they try to do the test in the neighborhood according to their bioweapon strategy, make it optimized, but because they are lack of the knowledge of the high transmissibility, then it's out of control. And after that, they purposely take the advantage of the outbreak in Wuhan and spread it all over the world to make the pandemic. And I'm happy to talk with the other witnesses and discuss with them about their evidence, because I believe they have to first understand Chinese Communist Party and their academic environment, and then to identify some misinformation or some other evidence which may not be quite accurate.
Thank you so much. I may have other questions, Andy, if we have time, but I'll let other members go first.
Hey, thank you, Debbie. And so now Representative Bob Good from Virginia. Bob.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs, and thank you, Dr. Yan, for being with us again. It's a true privilege to have your testimony and what you're sharing with us. My question is related to what Congressman Lesko just asked, and she already asked, would you think it was accidental or intentional? So as you've told us, you don't believe that it was accidental. Could China have, once the leak occurred, I was going to ask if they could have contained it if they chose to, but it sounds like what you're saying is they did not want to contain it because it was not accidental. And so therefore, as you've told us about their desire for biological warfare or unrestricted biowarfare, why was this experimental to release something that was not as dangerous as some other biological weapons could be? So why was it intentional? Why did they not choose to contain it? And why this virus and this level of lethality that it has?
Okay, thank you, Congressman Bob. Let me briefly explain that. So according to Chinese unrestricted bioweapon strategy, first thing they want to make sure is this virus can be look like nature occurring. And also they want to make sure it become optimized. So that means they also clearly mention in their documents that they want to do the test in a totally identical environment as the enemy's area. So that means they purposely can conduct the trials in the neighborhood because they want to optimize it to see what would happen. And on the other hand, as I said, there lack of some knowledge of transmissibility because they don't understand that virus at all, and there are some randomly results come out after a series of the modification, gain of function modifications. So at that time, they used wrong animal model, which cannot reflect the transmissibility. And to be honest, I'm the one with the Nature paper co-first author to identify the right transmissibility model using hamster last May. So before that, China doesn't know that, and they ignore that. That's why they thought it is under the control when they do the trial. But finally, it is out of control. And China government definitely doesn't want anyone to know this. That's why they start to cover up. And then later, there is a lot of results induced by that. And finally, they take the advantage of the outbreak and cause the pandemic all over the world.
Thank you. With Chairman's permission, could I ask a follow-up on the same subject, or would you like me to let another member go first?
Yeah, Bob, go ahead and ask your follow-up.
So with the intentionality here and the fact that it wasn't an accident, Dr. Yan, what might you envision be the next threat, the next danger in terms of this virus had something like a 99.9% survival rate. Perhaps that's why it was permitted to leak first in China. What kind of severity or lethalness are we looking at potentially for other biological weapons that would be far more dangerous? And so therefore my presumption would be they would not leak it in China, but they would try to go directly towards perhaps an enemy nation instead.
Okay, sir. So first, you should understand that China definitely doesn't only have one candidate. But the coronavirus, because it has a low lethality, but it can cause many kind of the consequence, and not only the morbidity, but also they can paralyze your medical facility and then later destroy the economic and social disorder, finally even destroy your civilization. So that is the point CCP uses now. And also, CCP has spent many years, which is even part of the national strategy to develop different type of the unrestricted bioweapons. What I can tell you is, for example, in 2010, the China CDC head George Fugao has led multiple central collaboration, including military and civilian labs from China and Hong Kong to search a novel zoonotic virus all over China. And they want to find the new materials, and also they want to develop their gain of function techniques. All these are prepared for their arsenal. So based on this, you could imagine that there were different types of the bioweapons. And as I know, like China is focusing also on Zika, West Nile, Ebola, and dengue virus, all these, and the mosquitoes as carrier. So we should not give more chance for China because CCP already celebrated their anti-COVID trophy this year. And they give award to many scientists and they encourage more of these studies. You cannot expect they just do it for research. And definitely they treat America as enemy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Congressman Russ Fulcher, Idaho. Russ.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Yan for participating. We know that you take a risk every time you speak out like this, and we're thankful for that. My question is similar to the follow-up that Congressman Good had, and just to be clear, I want to make sure that I understood correctly. You do anticipate that this will be there will be future releases on purpose coming out of China or Wuhan. Is that correct? Do I understand correctly? You anticipate this to be a future strategy of we can anticipate future releases. Is that your belief?
Hi, Congressman Russ. I want to mention that China didn't give up any more opportunities in using such unrestricted bioweapon. Clearly, for Chinese Communist Party government, they feel they already get some success in these attacks. So they will keep going using these things. This is their ongoing strategy, not the next step only. And if people think they will be mercy and stop it, then they are wrong because CCP's long-term motive is to use their ideology to conquer the world and to destroy the Western democratic civilization and freedom.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, please, Russ.
Dr. Yan, so to that end, what is the most effective way that you believe we can respond? Is that response one of fiscal penalty, one of aggression in some other way? What does the leadership of China understand, and what could be an effective response to their current behavior?
Dear sir, I cannot give you the policy suggestion because I'm only the expert in the science, but I can tell you based on my knowledge of CCP and this study, this program, I really suggest that U.S. government to realize that CCP actually is to take the advantage of the weakness of your laws, your freedom, and also your policies. And then they will keep doing that. So if you want to stop it, it's also easy. That is, you should know not believe CCP at all and not let their ideology spreading in America, and cut off the economic input for Chinese Communist Party, and also put them to the international court like what people has done to Nazi, because this is even worse than criminals they did in the World War II.
Thank you, Dr. Yan. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Fulcher. And now Representative Lesko from Arizona, Debbie.
Oh, thank you, Representative Biggs. Dr. Yan, I don't know if you're prepared to answer this question, but I wanted your opinion, since you are an expert in virology, if you believe that, if you recommend that people should get the vaccination, and also as a follow-up, should people that are vaccinated wear masks or not wear masks?
Dear Madam, I think these two policies, the mandatory vaccination and the mask, to be honest, hilarious. I mean, the people who made this policy themselves, they know it. Because first, let's talk about the vaccine. I work on the university influenza vaccine for 5 years in the WHO lab, and I have my patent on pending. Based on all my expertise and all the evidence I know now, there is no efficient vaccine as people expected for COVID-19. The first thing is there are a lot of obstacles for coronavirus to do the vaccine because people never get the successful vaccine for SARS-CoV-1. And then that's because of the different type of side effect based on the coronavirus, including the allergy and the antibody-dependent enhancement, which means antibody not only help you, but also harm you, and even can increase the reinfection. And the other thing is this virus is man-made. So this is based on military bacteria, not bacteria, backbone of the Zhoushan bat coronavirus, and they have done a serial, not only 1 or 2 gain of function modification on that. All these functions are intentionally to harm people. And we also have data that show that even spike protein in the experiment can show it's harmful potentially to give the risk to human body. So based on all these things, and together with the unknown secrets, the CCP scientists embedded into this virus, it's really hurry to give people the massive vaccination now. We should encourage better and more detailed trials and also development for vaccine. And at the same time, we still have other ways to suppress the virus. For example, early treatment using some long-term safe drugs like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, or other drugs. Even some can be applied for prophylaxis. And the mask in certain situations could be helpful, but definitely mandatory. It's not based on scientific evidence. It's just based on certain scientists' claims.
Debbie, anything else?
No. Thank you very much, Dr. Yan.
Thanks, Dr. Yan. Now we're going to go back to Representative Bob Good, Virginia. Bob?
I have a few, Chairman, so just cut me off when we need to allow somebody else in. Dr. Yan, to follow up on what you just said a moment ago, what would be the reason why drugs like hydroxychloroquine seem to be discouraged so much or suppressed so much for treatment in this country, do you think? Is it purely a profit incentive for other drugs, other vaccine, or what have you? Why is hydroxychloroquine, in your opinion, suppressed so much in this country?
Thank you, sir. First, let me tell you, in America, such drugs are suppressed. But in China, hydroxychloroquine is OTC, and people can get it easily, and it's cheap. And it really works. Actually, I'm one of the scientists who started to advocate for hydroxychloroquine back to early last year. And actually, we have one friend from Singapore who even started to advocate it from end of January last year. And then Chinese Communist Party also know that. So that's why the People's Liberation Army scientist Zhong Wu has applied the patent to use hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19. And then this make him get the award from Chairman Xi. And in America, I think the best person can understand definitely is Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci knows hydroxychloroquine is cheap and safe, and from the mechanism, it's available to apply to treat COVID-19. And there are a lot of doctors, like frontline doctors, like Dr. Zelenko, they also provide enough evidence to support it. Somehow, as I know, Dr. Fauci even withdrew many brave doctor's license as punishment, and then U.S. CDC and government put a policy to stop using such drug to save people's life, and these drugs also can help improve the life quality after the infection. So I feel very sad to see it happened. Meanwhile, I say they start to push the mandatory vaccination and mask policy and even lockdown again and again. So I sincerely hope Dr. Fauci or those scientists who support on the mandatory policy instead of the drug only treatment to have the open debate with scientists like me and also doctors like frontline doctors. We can provide the evidence to the public and let public say which side the evidence is more solid. We cannot give up the useful drug just because it's cheap. So that is irresponsible for people's life.
If I may follow up to Congressman Lesko's question, she asked about the vaccine mandate, and then she asked about mask mandate, and I don't recall that you specifically answered about the mask after you asked about the vaccine. Do cloth masks like people are wearing in this country, do they make any difference in preventing the spread of something like COVID?
Okay, so I want to add more details. So for the mask mandate, I don't support it because it's not based on scientific evidence. We know that in certain cases, for example, in some monkey experiment conducted by Professor Yoshikawa from the University of Wisconsin, they have shown that properly wear the right mask, I mean the qualified masks like the surgical N95 mask can reduce some percentage of the COVID-19 spreading in a short distance. And in a reality, if you give the mask mandate, you first need to guarantee these people they have the really know how to wear it purposely. And also this mandate, actually, they have a lot of detail which is not reasonable. For example, people can eat in the restaurant when they sit down, but when they stand up, they have to wear masks. And that doesn't make sense. And also, mask cannot stop the spreading of the virus, because this virus can stay on the surface of some table or other place, and if you touch it and you touch your eyes, there is also chance you can get infected. So according to my expertise, I think in certain situations, especially like for example in the hospital, when the medical staff face to the patients, then it would be helpful for them to wear the surgical mask or N95. But if you want to apply to all the society, even for the kids when they are playing, that is definitely not good for people's health.
Mr. Chairman, I can continue or yield. So your choice on who else.
Go ahead and take another moment there, Bob.
I'll do one more and then I'll yield.
Then I have some questions.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Yan, in your view, you've mentioned about Chinese individuals, some agents of the CCP, or they become agents of the CCP, even if they don't start that way, studying here in our country. In your view, from a threat standpoint, should we prohibit all Chinese nationals from studying in United States universities? or only those who are studying things like science, technology, engineering, math, or what we call STEM. We realize they can get here and then change their field of study, or only those who are in the graduate level, not the undergraduate level. What would you suggest from a mitigating of threat standpoint?
Oh, sir. So first, I want to emphasize that we Chinese people are innocent. And the evil thing is we have such a government which holds a communism ideology and dictatorship. So they would force people to do the things for them. And also they would send some people who are willing to help them to build this kind of infiltration network in the US. I think the most important thing is first, American government should start to look into this infiltration network which already exists in the America, because there are thousands of such labs, and you can do the things, for example, by checking their money flow, by checking their collaboration with Chinese military facilities, and by checking there's such communication among the military and also government projects. So then you have quite a lot of work to do to first stop the most important part of this infiltration network. And also you have to stop your American scientists to take the advantage of the laws to help Chinese Communist Party to build such network. For example, like Peter Daszak is definitely very important in this network, and Dr. Ralph Baric, as I mentioned. And then I think if there are more surveillance and also the law, if they can be promoted to stop such intelligence stealing migration, then it would be safe for even the Chinese students studying in U.S. or some good Chinese researchers stay in U.S. Because when Chinese people came to U.S., most of people want to enjoy the freedom and democracy in the America. And if the law can protect them, can support them, I believe many of these researchers, as I know, as my co-authors in my Yan reports, they would be very happy to do the right things without any worries to support us freedom and democratic country.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Dr. Yan, my question goes, I have a series of questions. I hope we have time to get to several of them. But on September 12th of 2019, it looks like more than 20,000 records were deleted that showed pathogens and pathology, all of the work that was going on with some of this virus research. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with the details of the database, but what I can tell you is the world are now focusing on the deleted database. And I can tell you that, although I cannot tell you what exactly the virus number and virus character in the database, but I can tell you that database is important, but it's not the only thing you can find in China. In that database, mostly there are the research results from the WIV, Wuhan Institute of Virology. But also there is massive result, conducted from the PLA, the Academy of Military Medical Science. They won't be included into that database. The gun database definitely can help CCP to hide some sensitive information, and also some information may relate to other types of unrestricted bioweapons ongoing. But if you only look at that, you will ignore the massive data actually stay in other labs, military civil, or other database. And China, most of the time, if it's really confidential, they even won't make such record, because you can consider it more like the mafia. They won't give you the receipt or protocol of drugs, because that would leave the evidence of the criminals. So I think the thorough investigation happened in China should be conducted to not only Wuhan Institute of Virology, but also involve the other military or military civil labs, and also their work, their money flows, their records. If not, only remove WIV cannot solve anything in this unrestricted bioweapon program.
Thanks for expanding on that and clearing that up. We've talked a little bit about the World Health Organization and the cover-up. Can you expand on the World Health Organization's role in covering up and assisting the CCP in covering up the leak of the Wuhan virus?
Thank you, sir. So first, WHO definitely, except for the research task, they have to surveillance this kind of biosafety danger happened all over the world. That's why my lab in the University of Hong Kong is one of the reference lab which should be responsible to surveillance this kind of dangers happen in that area. And definitely it failed. So the thing is, WHO and the other international organizations have been long-term infiltrated and corrupted by Chinese Communist Party. And also, I can tell you, there are a lot of bridges between CCP, PLA to this kind of international organizations. For example, I want to point out one very important expert in the coronavirus and infectious disease field, Dr. Malik Paris, who is the co-head of that WHO lab I worked for, and who is also the SARS celebrity recommended by Dr. Fauci, who's also the great friend of the previous chief secretary of WHO, Margaret Chan, and also China CDC head George Fugao. So people like Malik, they have provided the fundamental knowledge to help Chinese Communist Party to build the bioweapon. And on the other hand, because they are the celebrity in this field, so they can be a bridge to facilitate CCP's communication to WHO, which make WHO can easily work with CCP and also spread misinformation to mislead the world and help CCP to cover up.
So with the cover-up and WHO helping CCP, there's another aspect that I'd like you to touch on briefly as well. We know now that there are a number of scientists and a number of journalists, citizen journalists and others who were disappeared in China as this was breaking. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay, sir. So let me tell you, the missing journalists or scientists are just part of people you know. Because for Chinese Communist Party, they spend a huge amount of money to stabilize the society, which means they need to use lies and misinformation to cheat the world. And if you are some person they thought which lead to the information leak, or which would give some opinions which government are not happy, so it's easy for the government to make you disappeared, either physically or mentally. Like, so these people are just examples the foreign people knows. But as I say, for example, in the Hong Kong protest, when I was in Hong Kong, there are numerous young protesters or senior people because they are fighting for freedom. And they are easily disappeared by the government, and the government will control their family or friends to shut them up. And then they basically just not exist in the world. And also for me, since I was assigned for the confidential task from the 31st December 2019 by my supervisor, WHO expert Dr. Liu Peng, to conduct this kind of investigation about the new pneumonias happen in Wuhan, I was clearly warned for several times that be careful, keep silent. If not, you will be disappeared. If you cross the red line, which means the invisible red line that China government doesn't like, then you will be disappeared. So these are the very actual danger posed on every people who are controlled by Chinese Communist Party. if American like Chinese Communist Party keep doing that, what I have to say that in the soon future, Americans will experience the same thing, but it would be late for you all.
Well, thank you. That's part of it is your courage for coming and telling us and speaking out and speaking with clarity and a strong, loud voice. We're going to the last question going to our friend from Virginia, Representative Good. Last question.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Yan, with China's stated goal of global dominance by 2035, why do they seek that? And why, in your view, in light of that, might there be individuals or organizations in the United States who are complicit in what China has been doing in their labs over these recent years?
Okay, sir. Actually, this is because it's China's long-term strategy. They talk about 2035, but it can be accelerated, and they want to achieve the goal definitely as early as possible. The thing is, China need to prepare it for a long time because they know if we talk about, for example, advanced technology or weapon, this kind of storage or development, that definitely has a big difference compared to U.S. But they can prepare to use the other way to gradually infiltrate America and also using the unrestricted bioweapon or using propaganda information to change America. That takes time. So they have already conducted quite a lot. They know they have the difference, and there is a big distance between China and America. But they want one hand put America down from both economic or your social orders, and the other hand, they can increase Chinese economic and also increase their control to the important areas in U.S. As I mentioned, the infiltration from CCP's military is already involved the U.S. like the biotech, science, and education, and also military, and also space, and also, of course, media. So if America still thinks that they have the deadline until 2035, then to be honest, Chinese Communist Party is laughing at you. And you have to know that they have studied the weakness of the American laws, and that's the part they are taking the full advantage of. And you have to stop this kind of things as soon as possible and hold China accountable.
Thank you, Dr. Yan. Thank you, Chairman Biggs.
Thank you. And I thank everyone who's joined us today, watching this, wherever you may be. This will be circulated on social media as well, but especially, particularly my House Freedom Caucus members, as well as Melissa Brown, who works for us and has helped put this together. And also special thanks for your courage, for your speaking out, and the information that you've given to us today. And I know you'll continue to give to us, and I wish you Godspeed. Thank you, Dr. Li-Meng Yan. And with that, we're signing out and wish you all the best.